Okay, so what had happened is that my camera ran out of memory space while I was explaining how I messed up. So if you're going to cut me off, that's a good time to cut me off. But what I had done is when I was stitching around here, around this opening, I was running into a lot of problems because, you know, it's a small space that we're working with on these, you know, half-scale pattern sizes. And, you know, my pins were getting in the way. I was just running into a mess. And so what I had talked about after the camera had cut me off is that, you know, what you might be able to do is if you're at your home machine or you have some painter's tape, you can identify that line and just run a strip of tape up and down the side there. What I decided to do while I was transferring videos onto my computer to have some more space on my memory card is that I was just going to do a quick basting stitch around the edge to hold that in place. So I just took my hand sewing needle and thread that I had handy from the previous exercise, and I went ahead and just did a quick, you know, basting stitch or a running stitch, however you want to put it in there. But I went ahead and just stitched it down. I think that it's going to come out really easy, and I don't have to worry about pins and all that mess. So if you want to go ahead and do that step, I think it's going to make my life a lot easier as soon as I turn this over. So what I have to do is I have to stitch the top of this casing down now. So now that I have it basted in place, I'm going to go ahead and flip it around. And then what I can see is I can then stitch along this inside edge here, and I can place it pretty close to that folded line, not having to worry about, you know, any pins getting in the way and whatnot. So although the book's like miraculously has that stitch line show up, I think taking a little bit of time to maybe base that 1/8 inch of a fold over can save us some headache in the long run. So I'm going to go ahead and base this or go ahead and stitch this into place. I'm going to do some overlapping stitches, and what I'm going to use as a guide is I have that folded edge facing this side, so it's not facing the guide like I can before, but I'm going to use a point on my I want to make sure that's tight. It looked a little wobbly. I'm going to go ahead and use a point that's on my presser foot to use that as a guide. I'm going to run that right along my folded edge, that 1/8 inch folded edge from what I had just turned up. And of course my needle decided to come out of place. I tell ya, I feel like the world, my sewing machine's trying to tell me it's time to call it a day. But we're so close to being done, so I want to finish this out, even if I have to thread this machine a million times. Just make sure my bobbin thread is also to the top, you know, while we're just doing some thread maintenance here. Go ahead and put those back. Everything's on and working, so okay, I'm going to reposition this back underneath of my presser foot, and I'm going to line up that fold line with this guide on my presser foot that I'm setting for myself. What I want to do is I just want to make sure that when I'm stitching, it's very close to that that folded edge, because it's only folded over under 1/8 of an inch. So we need to be pretty close to that folded edge while we stitch this in place. And I'm not going to do any back stitching again. I'm just going to do some overlapping stitches when I get to that point. So hopefully my explanation of what I'm doing, because I know it's going to be difficult to see on these videos because it's such a fine amount of space, will help you to follow along while you're doing this. Alright, working my way around right along that folded edge. I'm probably sewing maybe a 1/16 of an inch away from that folded edge line, because I want to make sure that it's going to catch that casing fold under that I had pressed into place. Okay, now while I'm approaching kind of where I started, I need to have a hole left open so that I can insert that my elastic into this casing that I just made. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to stop, and I probably have maybe about a 1/2 inch of space left open, and I'm going to go ahead and pull that out and trim up those thread tails, and then come back and cut these ones that I started off with. So I started fairly close to that center seam, but I stopped and gave myself, I mean, it looks actually more like 3/4 of an inch, which is fine. You just want to make sure that you can get your elastic casing down in there. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and turn this back out to the wrong side out, I guess, and I'm going to go ahead and just trim up, or I'm going to go ahead and remove that hand basing that I had put into place to help me earlier. So I'm going to go ahead and just remove that now, since everything is nicely stitched down. I swear sometimes my fingernails and fingers don't want to do the job, so I need to get my scissors in there to help me out a little bit. Well, it's pretty close to that, stitching right on top of it this last time around, which is fine. It comes out so easily by using a longer basting stitch. So got all that hand sewing out now, and so what I need to do is I now need to insert my elastic into this casing, or this tunnel that we just made. So I'm going to find the end that I had marked on. Wasn't that end? And I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to attach a safety pin to the end. Now I'll have some safety pins in class. I'm going to go ahead and bring my safety pin box to class, so you guys can use it if you want. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to cut at my, I had originally marked it at was it 7.5, I think was that far distance, and then I marked it again at 7, a half inch shorter. So I'm going to go ahead and cut it at that 7.5 marking. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to insert this into that hole that I had left open on the casing. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to now come back and attach the other end of this elastic just to the seam allowance there, just so that if I get on a roll I don't lose it. So I'm just going to work this safety pin around the hole. Going back, working that elastic through. I'm kind of getting back to the point, because it's a small circle. I'm getting back to that point where I first inserted it. So if I can get that safety pin back up through the hole, then I can go ahead and pull that through. Now I want to double check and make sure that I didn't get my elastic all turned around, and I think I do. I feel something that was turned in there. Double check, make sure that it's fairly flat, and then what you can do is you can cinch that up. Once it's flat, you can cinch it up, and then you can pull the far side too, so we have a decent area to work with here. And what you want to do is you want to make sure that you overlap these elastic ends. You don't want to do a seam where you're putting one side of them together. You want to create an overlap. Now, as you can see on my original elastic markings, I have a 1/2 inch overlap area. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to overlap that with, I'm going to put that on the top side of my elastic and match up my end of the other side with that marking there. Alright, then what I'm going to do is I'm just going to flip that around, and I'm going to create and I'm going to cinch this up so I have enough room to work. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to create an X on this space, this 1/2 inch space that I have here. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to place it under my presser foot. And you know what else? You can create an X. It depends on how wide your elastic is. This is not super wide elastic. In your book, it looks like it's probably about an inch wide, so they have a lot more space to create this box. So I think what we're going to do is I'm just going to place my elastic overlap underneath of my presser foot, and then I'm going to switch and do a zigzag. But what I want to do is I want to shorten up that stitch length I want that to be, I would say probably about half. So set your stitch length to 0.5 and then have your zigzag be fairly wide. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and insert my needle, and I'm going to reach through to the back side and grab a hold of that elastic so I can help guide it forward. So I'm just going to go back and forth, and it's not going to want to move. It's a very short stitch length, so these zigzags are pretty closely set together. And I'm just stitching along with that, along with the way that the elastic is running, so long ways. And then I need to raise up my needle and then go ahead and cut those tails off. So I'll see if I can do a close-up on this. So what I did was I just did some zigzag stitching, which the zigzag will allow for some stretch, but it's going to hold it in place. So do some zigzagging over that 1/2 inch crisscross area that we have, and then what you can do is you can go ahead and run that elastic now back down through the casing. And my elastic, it's not very tight. If you do this and you're like, you know what, that's not enough for me, I want to shorten it up more, all you have to do is you can go back in and just trim it off. So I'm going to go ahead, and I really thought that it was going to be a little bit tighter than what it was. It wasn't. I want it to be a little bit tighter. So all I'm going to do is I'm going to overlap that again. I'm going to kind of re-pin that area just to hold the overlapping of the elastics in place temporarily for me to set it under my machine. And I'm just going to zigzag that again. Okay. Alright, I'm going to put my needle down. Alright, then it's starting that zigzag. Whoo! It went right into my needle, my pin. I better pull that out. Alright, my needle's in the down position. I'm going to reach underneath and grab the back side of that elastic so I can help just guide it and keep it straight as it's going underneath of my presser foot. Alright. Okay, got some zigzag in there, so I can go ahead and lift that up and pull it out. And if you stitch beyond your overlap, that's okay. It's not going to hurt anything. I stitched a little bit beyond mine. Try to match it up the best that you can, at least from edge to edge. As you can see, like mine's not perfect, but it caught it. It's doing the job. That's what we want it to do. And then I'm going to go ahead and pull that back into the casing, and as you can see, I now have a little bit more of a tighter wrist area. So this is up to you. If you are happy with how that looks, then you're good to go. But I wanted to make mine a little bit more, a little bit tighter. So then what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and turn that to so the right side is facing me, so I can go ahead and close that casing hole that I had before. And I'm going to put a couple pins in just to keep it in place. And what you might need to do is you might need to really stretch that fabric out. I don't know, I might be able to make it work without those pins. So I'm going to go ahead and come under here, and it's a very small area, and I know I've said that like a bazillion times, but I'm going to try to keep that fabric as flat as I can, and to go ahead and close this casing hole that we ran the elastic through. I need to make sure that I reset my my stitch length to a straight stitch, and then go ahead and adjust my my stitch length as well. So go ahead and do those adjustments. I'm going to go ahead and try to put this back under here. Okay, as you can see, my nose is down in this business. So make sure that if you need to, you are getting close as can be, and you can see what you're doing. Alright, lining it up there. I'm going to go ahead, I'm just going to do like one back grab of the back stitch and then come back forward. Alright. Okay, I'm going to use both hands trying to keep it straight and keep that fabric flat, because that elastic wants to cinch it up tight. So I'm just running right along that folded edge again. Alright, and I'm getting to where I started. I'm going to overlap a couple stitches and call it a day. Raise up that presser foot and pull that out. I think another option for doing this, because you're just closing that hole, is if you're a lot more comfortable with hand sewing, especially in some tight areas like this. You know, I think that you could easily just close up that hole. And you know, I left my casing hole a 1/4 inch wide. You don't, or 3/4 inch open to be able to access and pass that that elastic through. I don't think you need to leave it that wide. I think you could probably, as long as you can get your safety pin through, that's all the wider that you need it, because you can pull that elastic out and then it'll slip back in. So that is your self-face casing with an elastic insert. And so that can be, I really wish my hand was smaller so I could put my hand through and and see how it is. So, but that's how it's done. If you guys need any help with making this happen, please let me know. I know that it's a very tight space, but again, if you're struggling with that sewing machine and you need to close off some of this stuff, don't be afraid to head towards your hand sewing needle, because it really doesn't take a whole lot of extra time just to put in a quick slip stitch or a quick running stitch to hold things in place where you want it. So, okay,